this month's Cancer Book Club for May of 2018. Today's book is Worms on Parachutes, and we have with us today the author, Sarah Phillips from England. And so our plan today is to just share about the book and ask questions about the book and sort of tie it into the overall, cancer experience and the writing experience, which is important to us. So, so I guess I'll start by saying, Sarah, can you sort of briefly summarize for us the book, the arc, the story arc of your book? I could do it because I've read it, but I'd like you to do it.
Yeah, well, basically, I wrote the book at the end of my treatment. There's lots of people that write during their treatment. I decided not to do that. I got to the end of my treatment and decided to write a book, and it's kind of like I've written it. It's a memoir, so I wanted to build my character. So I took my story really back to my childhood, and my journey actually started in my childhood through to my teenage years when I had...
Because you're a two-time cancer survivor.
I am, yeah. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma as a teenager, and then endured treatment for that, went through treatment that was chemotherapy and radiotherapy. It was called mantle field radiotherapy at the time. What actually happened, it transpired that it was about, I think it was exactly 20 years later, I was then diagnosed with breast cancer. And really going through that treatment was very different. Obviously, I was a mum, so I had two young children to contend with, and just went through the treatment, went through all of the surgery. It was quite a long journey. I think it was, in terms of active treatment, it lasted about 3 years. And I just kind of like thought that as I entered the treatment and met all of my doctors, my medical professionals and everything, you kind of meet these people and you have no idea who they are. And yet they then take you on board as their patient, and they kind of fix you and put you back together. And I guess I decided to write a book really as a testament to the care that I received and a little thank you gift for them. So that's kind of like what my motivation was. And then in the journey of writing, it soon very quickly became apparent to me that I had a lot to offer other people that were going through cancer. As I started to read, I thought that it would be a very helpful read to somebody, not maybe somebody just going through cancer, but maybe their carer or their friends, because it's a great, I believe that it's a great support mechanism that people really need, and it helps them to understand what it's like to be diagnosed, to go through treatment, and details it quite specifically. So, yeah.
And have you had that response from your readers that are sort of like, boy, that book really helped me because it helped me understand my...
I've had, yeah. I mean, I hate the fact that you have to say how fantastic your book is, so I'm not going to do that. But what happened is amazing reviews that have taken place from, social media is an amazing platform now. And I think connecting with people through social media and telling them about the book, them reading it, coming back to you with feedback, the reviews that go on Amazon, predominantly amazon.co.uk, but there's a couple of reviews on .com or Goodreads as well. But they're absolutely amazing, and it is so helpful to people. They've really benefited from reading it. It's been an eye-opener. It's been an education for them. They've been able to prepare for surgery. They've taken advice from the book. I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. I kind of just wrote about things that I felt had helped me to get through my treatment. And they really did help me. And the little pointers like juicing and stuff like that I felt really benefited me in the healing process, like going through surgery. So it has really helped people. But quite recently, actually, there was some ladies in Australia that read the book as well, and they were so inspired after reading it. It actually inspired them to then go and do a parachute jump. and there
Oh
was
my
about
God.
12 of them, and this is in Australia, so this is like the other side of the world.
That's
And
quite
there was
thrilling,
12
isn't
of
it?
them, yeah, 12 of them, all dressed up. They had t-shirts printed with worms on parachutes on the t-shirts, and they all jumped, but they jumped to raise funds for the Breast Cancer Foundation in Sydney. So it's really great that the book has taken on, just like, obviously it's only happened once, but has taken on something else whereby, you know, breast cancer charities are actually benefiting now from people deciding to jump out of an aeroplane dressed as worms on parachutes, which is amazing. It
That
is
is amazing. That must have been
absolutely
so
amazing.
That's great.
thrilling for you.
It
as a-
was, it was surreal. It was surreal. It felt so odd to think that, you know, it's your book, your cover that you've done, and there it is, all these people just jumping out of planes. It was
You're jumping
incredible.
out of planes.
Absolutely
Oh my
amazing.
God. So another question I have for you is, you know, one of the common themes of cancer writers, I've wrote a book myself, the Cancer Olympics, about my story, which sadly I thought had ended, but had clearly not
Yeah.
ended. Um, the uh, uh, One of the things that various authors have talked to us, and I've experienced myself, is the challenge of revisiting the cancer experience while you're writing. So especially if you write it once your treatment is over, you kind of have to go back to those horrible times and those awful times and telling your children and all these awful,
Mm-hmm.
painful moments. And so we, you know, just sort of what are your reflections on how challenging that was for you to revisit the painful times?
Mm-hmm. I think when you go through treatment, you are surrounded by a team of medical professionals at all times. I think after, because I actually wrote after my treatment finished, I didn't write a diary or anything like that. So I literally I wrote from memory, and I
Yeah.
wrote on reflection. And when I started writing, it's really strange actually, because people say, oh, you know, writing is cathartic. It's a really good thing to do. It helps you. I never felt like I wanted to write because I needed to heal myself. I had a different motivation to write. So when I went back to write and and I did revisit experiences. There were moments when I felt fine writing it, but when I then read it out loud, that's when it hit me, and you know, the tears came, and I cried particularly in the early stages. I cried so much. I can't tell you how much I cried. I was exhausted. I cried. But then, writing's a funny thing, because you write, and then you rewrite, and you revisit it, and you write something else, you come back to it, you rewrite it, and eventually you become stronger reading your own words. So yeah, it was challenging in itself to get everything out initially, but as you start to rewrite and you kind of like finalize it, then it becomes a lot more easy to digest, and to kind of have the strength to actually believe that you're doing something right with your words, and you know that it's going to go on and help others. So that, you know, you don't actually detach yourself from the story, because the story is always there. But it got easier over time. In the early stages, it was tough.
As you reflect over two cancer experiences, 20 years apart, what are some of the things that really hit you? I mean, how different were the times? How different was your reaction? And I almost hate to ask this because I've been through it too. How hard was it when you get slammed with this a second time?
The first time was when I was 16, so kind of protected by my parents to some extent. I just went through the treatment. I think it really, really, really hit me the second time around, because I was older, I understood more of the world. I was a mum, my kids were 5 and 7. Any cancer diagnosis, you immediately think that it's the end of the world, that you're so fearful. I honestly thought that I wasn't going to be here to see my children grow up. And yeah, that has been something that's been really tough to kind of get over. And I think I think all your fears kind of all coming to one. There's nothing in life that will ever prepare you to hear those words, that you know the cancer's come back, and yeah, and the road ahead, you don't really know what the road ahead is going to be. So that was tough, but more so because I was scared for the people around me, not necessarily for myself, but people around me. So
Do
that's
you
what I
think,
found.
do you think we've evolved a bit in terms of, you were talking about juicing and things like that. Do you think our perspective on health has evolved in 20 years?
I think there's a lot more. I think people talk about it a lot more now, and I think there's lots more research that's taken place. I think for me personally, I know how I felt. I had read about how important it was to. I mean, it makes sense anyway, and it is common sense that obviously the healthier you eat, what you're putting into your body is going to kind of make your body work. It's like, you know, it's fuel, isn't it? You've got to fuel your body correctly. um, what I noticed very quickly with juicing in particular, and bearing in mind that's going from this is through treatment, it's not necessarily now. um, I found that I felt better in myself, and going through surgery, I definitely believe that that was part of something that definitely allowed me to heal a lot more quickly, because I was quite focused on it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
We're
And I
losing
think,
the lower half of your your face here. Yeah, thank you.
oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, yeah, sorry.
No, I think that feeling of taking control in some way is just essential because everything else is totally out of control. No,
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what it is. I think the exercise came about, and the kind of the diet came about because that is something that you did have control over. There are so many things in your life that you don't have control over. That your health is one of them. Cancer is something that I don't necessarily believe you have control over. So I think you overcompensate on things that you can control. And I think diet is certainly one area that seems to get the brunt of it, definitely, from a positive angle as well.
You know, one of the themes that I took from your book quite a and was striking for me was the whole issues of relating to the reconstruction, the breast reconstruction, which I understand you had both breasts done, and one of them failed, and you had to have it reconstructed. You know, so you ended up having to go through the significant challenges of being altered physically, and then you know, I guess what I read was that they did a perfect job on your first reconstruction. The second one was a bit more complicated, and so you know that's a common theme for lots of cancer patients is you know the fear of disfigurement and the facing the challenges of reconstruction, and also the anxiety around what if the reconstruction doesn't work out, and you would have had to have gone through that the second time when the breast didn't take. And
Yeah,
my
I think
understanding is the procedure that they used was pretty invasive.
yeah, I mean, for me, I was very fortunate because I was offered breast reconstruction immediately, so that's what I went with. So the first surgery that I had a mastectomy and immediate reconstruction, and that went swimmingly well. It was absolutely great. There weren't any problems. The second reconstruction, because the first had gone so well, it never even crossed my mind that it wouldn't work, um, and I'd also got myself incredibly fit. I allowed
Right.
myself time to be fit to put myself on the operating table. So in a million years, I never ever anticipated that it wouldn't work. But what was kind of pretty amazing actually was the fact that although the reconstruction failed, I was never. Everybody is different. Everybody approaches this different. Everybody has their own way of dealing with anything. And for me personally, I think I automatically thought, for me, reconstruction was the way that I wanted to go forward. And I completely understand that that's not the right decision for absolutely everybody. But going through that reconstruction and that reconstruction failing, I kind of knew that it was failing. But when they actually took the reconstruction away, I had a temporary implant put in that was then inflated over the course of time. So when I looked at my body, I knew that it was going to be short term. But I don't actually think my body ever offended me personally. I had a partner that loved me for the way I was, so I feel like I was very kind of lucky to not face something that I couldn't deal with mentally. Am I making sense when I say that?
No, I think that's I like that. I like that perspective, and how where other people might look at us and say, "Oh my God, look at you," and they can't, and especially if the scars are underneath your clothes or whatever, that it's sort of like, I could never live with that, and then you think, I can and I do, and I
yeah.
do.
Do you know what? I think I've got quite a kind of skin that obviously heals quite well, because my scarring has only ever been kind of like a really kind of neat little line. I mean, if you were to look at me now, yes, all I've got is literally like quite thin white kind of lines. So they're not horrific at all. They're absolutely,
How many years has it been since your last
absolutely amazing. Sorry?
How many years has it been since your last week?
You know what? It's really weird. It's gone so quickly. I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. It'll be 11 years ago in June.
Okay.
I had my
lots of time for those scars to
so 11 years ago was kind of like this summer would be my first one, and then it's probably about 8.5 years for the second one. So some time, yeah,
you got lots of time.
It's amazing, and it's amazing. You know, I'm a great advocate for kind of breast reconstruction, and I kind of run a support group as well for ladies going through breast reconstruction now, just because I think that it's, it puts you back to how you were when you started, the best that they possibly can. It's not perfect, but it's, it's great. Absolutely great.
The other theme that I liked in your book was your sort of faith in your surgeon. How you totally loved the surgeon and how he was like, and even though he didn't necessarily have the background to do the second reconstruction, which required a different technique, that you went with him anyway because you loved him so much. And so I thought that was sort of touching, and I think that's not uncommon, I guess, among some.
Yeah, I think the way that I would actually describe that is I was 36 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was a mum with 2 daughters. I stumbled across somebody. We have the National Health Service in the UK. I stumbled across somebody who, for the first reconstruction, I was absolutely petrified. I can't tell you how scared I am of surgery, of anaesthetics, of, just absolutely everything like that. And I think that because I'd got a surgeon that had got me through the first reconstruction so brilliantly, I just kind of like felt like I was in the right hands, that I ended up trusting him to do what he needed to do. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't have put myself in the hands of somebody that didn't know what they were doing. And equally, I don't think any surgeon would kind of stand in a theatre and actually attempt to do anything that they didn't feel confident about doing on a patient anyway. So yeah, I think it was I literally took myself and I put my life in their hands, and they did get me through it so graciously. So I'm so grateful for that. So I was very fortunate.
When did you start writing the book, and how many years did it take you from start to finish?
From start to finish, I actually worked full time, so it did actually take 3 years in total. And I probably, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well, I wanted it to be right. I kind of wrote in the evenings and weekends and stuff like that. So yeah, it was quite a long time. I know I hear people write saying that they wrote their book in months and so forth, but no, that wasn't me. It did take me a little while.
Robin,
I'm not I'm not a natural author or anything like that. I took an experience and wrote about an experience, which in some ways is, I don't know, some people can say that's more difficult. I say it's probably a little bit more easier. So yeah, no, it did
awesome.
take me a little while. Yeah,
That's
but I'm very
awesome.
proud of it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah,
It's
no, it's,
it's a
everybody
great.
I know who's written a good book, it has taken them time. This did not magically appear. I mean, Robin, how long did you write
Yeah,
that book?
I mean, when you
Probably about 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
for mine.
yeah, I think for me, I wanted to make sure that it was right. And I think if you just start put pen to paper or whatever, and you just wrote, I don't feel that would have been the right way for me to have done it. So I'm glad, it took me time, but I'm very happy with it. It's something I'm really proud of, and I think it's a massive achievement.
One of the one of the things that I remember about writing a book is that eventually you get to the point where you're like, are there two T's in vomiting?
Oh,
How
absolutely. Yeah.
do you spell
Yeah.
English exactly? Is there
Yeah.
and so these horrible words are now a distant thing where you have to have the technical objectivity to say I'm only, wait, there's a misplaced
Yeah.
period after the sentence where I described my head falling off, so it's just I find it a funny it's an interesting experience because you do have to have a certain that scarf's going crazy,
Yeah.
certain
I
amount of
think
detachment to
I,
have it work.
I think as well, when you're writing, sometimes I think you know what you're trying to say, you know what you want to say, so you read the words. So even though the words aren't there, you read them. But I completely understand what you're saying about how many T's, title, how many T's are in title? How do you spell this? How do you spell that?
Right.
Oh, it's so funny. But I have to say, by the time I got to the end of it, I knew that I had done everything that I could possibly do. I was absolutely exhausted. I just cried as soon as I kind of proofread it and everything for the last time, and that was it. It was ready to kind of be printed. I just cried. I was so kind of mentally exhausted by it, but I knew that I had done all that I could do to make it as good as I could do. So
Because
yeah.
part of the other aspect of your story, talking about exhaustion, was that after your treatments, you decided to become a marathon runner, and then
Yeah,
run a
crazily.
marathon and do in a marathon, and so that was quite exhausting to read about and to think about. Geez, God, you just went through all this hell on high water, and then then to do the running, and then think, I don't really like running. This is, I mean, that
I know.
your friend saying, I'm never doing this again.
You know what? I'm the kind of person that I think at the moment, to get me through the process, I had to have something to focus on. And I think going through treatment, I focused on that. I knew my dates that my surgery was going to take place. I focused on that, so I got myself fit for that surgery. When the treatment finished, I kind of didn't really want to sit there and kind of mellow in what had happened. I wanted to I guess do something positive from something that had been so awful. And so for me, that was having that focus on something else. And initially that was obviously agreeing to do the marathon, but that was to raise funds for for money into breast cancer research. So it was my kind of give something back, which is a bit of a cliche, I know, but that's exactly what it
No,
was.
not
I
at
wanted
all.
back.
I've met
You know,
many cancer survivors who would say, I never want to think about it again. I never want to have 1 second of thought. I'm never going to think about it. And I've had cancer survivors with my own book, The Cancer Olympics, where, they'll say, I can't even look at the title. I can't, I don't want to, I don't want that. I don't want to, they don't want it to be part of their identity. Whereas someone like you or I would say, well, it is kind of my identity and I may as well do something positive with that.
Well,
So,
Absolutely.
I would
And I
argue it's a traumatic experience, and you have to own it. And only by owning it can you get rid of it. Really,
really,
I would argue that not looking at it means it's still sitting there, and somewhere somehow all these things pop up again, and it's real hard work, emotionally and psychologically, to go back and revisit these things, and think about where you were and how you felt and what the hospital smelled like and the fear and everything else. This is
absolutely, yeah.
not easy to do, but I think it can be incredibly cathartic.
I definitely think it can as well. I I don't know. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I do apologize.
Oh, no, we're just talking about, going back and re-examining the experience versus ignoring it. I do know people who have also gone on, they've ignored it and just plowed on. And I'm thinking of
I
one
think,
person in particular, and this person looked so haggard and drawn and they were unhappy. And I thought, I wonder if there's any correlation here.
I
well,
think
I could say as a psychologist, which is as what my day job is or was, is that that kind of repression can lead to more trauma down the pike
no,
because you have not
no,
processed the trauma
yeah,
of.
and I think, and I'm sure you've all been through it. Many people that will go through it anyway. I think that if you don't face your feelings, they will. If you try and bury your feelings, they will resurface at some point. And probably at times when you least expect it. There's still days now that I'm suddenly taken unaware and I will cry for absolutely no reason, and it just comes from nowhere. The emotions are funny. They are really strange, and I do think you have to face your emotions and deal with it. And I don't think it, if you didn't face it now, there will be a point in your life when it will just flood back and maybe affect you a lot more more seriously than had you have faced them kind of as much as possible, as early as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think too, if you don't face them, sometimes you start behaving in very strange ways to avoid them. And that certainly isn't beneficial either.
Yeah, I think it's good to talk as well. I think it's good to share your stories and share your emotions, and just because I think it just offers lots of support to other people as well. Somebody else can take advice from however you're feeling. So yeah, I do think it's good to talk about how you're feeling.
One of the things that I appreciated about your book and your storytelling was that you would describe these huge meltdowns you would have where you'd cry for hours and hours and hours, and how upset you were at certain junctures, which I think a lot of people who haven't had cancer wouldn't understand. So for example, when at the end, when you were saying, I had to leave and I couldn't say goodbye to the surgeon, and I cried my head off because I couldn't say goodbye to the surgeon I wanted to thank, and how the nurses were like, what the hell is this all about, and just your honesty about those moments, those moments where there's this collision of your
Yeah,
experience
I
with
think,
whatever the circumstances were that led to you having really heavy duty emotional meltdowns. And I thought, as I was reading it, I was thinking how permission giving that would be to other people who I went through the whole hospital and never cried once, and how, no, it's okay to cry. You could
yeah,
cry.
I mean, I think that I think the whole journey had been a major roller coaster, and there were so many ups and downs, and those people, those medical professionals, had literally got me through it. They kind of kept me alive. They kept my brain alive, which is, is part of the process. And I think that because like you've already mentioned, I was adamant that I was going to stick with the same surgeon because I trusted that surgeon. And I think when you have so much trust in somebody, and they've done so much for you, and you've gone through all your treatment, bearing in mind that it was 3 reconstructions, so it was 3 lengthy operations. You know, there were 2
They're like
kind of
12 hours, aren't they?
1.5-hour operations. There was that, and then finally to be with somebody that operated for kind of continuously for 25 hours, didn't want to leave you with failed surgery. And bearing in mind that probably my blood vessels weren't that great at the time, so nobody knows what kind of state your inner body is going to be in.
Well, because you had previous
radiotherapy, so it's okay looking at a body from the outside, but actually nobody knows what your body's like until they actually start to operate on you. So I think that I'd gone through so much, and I think it was at the point, I know exactly what you're talking about, when all you want to do is say thank you, and in your mind you've planned and you've prepared yourself for that person, to be in a position to thank that person for absolutely everything they've done for you. And then when that person, through no fault of their own, isn't there, it's this whole, it's what I'm saying is you never know when your emotions are going to surface. So for me, that was a major part. There was a major point where my emotions, I'd literally been kind of cocooned in this kind of roller coaster and had been looked after, and then suddenly I was on my own, and I had no idea how I would react. It was just really strange. It was so strange. I literally could not stop crying, all because the person that I wanted to say thank you to actually wasn't there. So yeah, I've said thank you obviously since, and the book is a great testament.
Exactly, the book
as well. So that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So yeah.
I remember writing my initial surgeon. I remember writing him a letter on the day he retired, and I nominated him for an award twice, and he didn't win. But I sent him all the letters that I'd accumulated from other nominee, other references, whatever. And so it was kind of sort of neat. It was sort of a neat moment to give something nice to someone who,
and you know,
who helped you.
I think we're all different, and we all have different reasons to act. And I know from kind of ladies that I've met with the support group that we have, you know, their doctors, their surgeons, their medical team is kind of, they just naturally put them on a pedestal because they've done something that has been absolutely amazing, and they've put them back together and they've saved their lives. So I think if anybody does that for you, you can't help but have this kind of affection towards them. And I think that's a completely natural feeling to have.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of an interesting observation. Many people, bear with me a sec, okay? Many of us go through life and we know it all. We tell everybody what they should do, or what they should think, and everything else. But I find that people who have gone through cancer, and you were just alluding to this, recognize how incredibly important an individual journey is, and how it is so different than everybody else's. There are similarities. We can all help each other, and we can all learn, but every journey is unique.
Absolutely. And I think people respond differently. I think people react to treatment differently. In my book, all I'm doing is telling my story, my experiences, what happened to me. This is what it was like for me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same for you, but it's your story. So yeah, everybody's different. And you know what, cancer is a really funny thing as well, because you could be the healthiest, the fittest, the non-smoker, the non-drinker, you know, the fitness fanatic. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get cancer, and it's not going to mean that your kind of treatment is going to be any easier. I think we're all different. We're just all different. It's so complex. It really is.
I think so. And I think that the thing that's really helpful about these discussions and forums is that as different as we all are, we all strangely, also experience the same things in that emotional roller coaster that you're talking about, because we all have
Absolutely.
those highs, we all have those lows, and those emotions are the same.
Absolutely. I think the innermost thoughts are the same. I think at the end of the day, we felt the same. And I think that's why sharing stories, whether it's the book, whether it's blogs or whatever, whether it's talking to people, I think that it's so important to do that, because it's so helpful, it's so empowering for people, it's it's just so helpful for people to know and to understand.
I have one last question, I guess, and that is there a question that you would like readers to ask you about your book? Is there a question that no one has asked you, or that you would kind of think, yeah, I would really like to talk about that aspect?
You know, the book is written in a way that is just friendly. It's just as if I would be sitting beside anybody, just talking to them as I'm probably talking to you now. I think, you know, when you write a book, I don't know whether you found this as well with your titles. I think people always ask you what the title of your book's going to be or what you're going to call it. And I think that for me, I wanted to write a book that wasn't that was going to be more inspiring. And I didn't want like a pitiful title. So to come up with a book that's related to cancer with the title of Worms on Parachutes is just so bizarre.
Very unusual.
Yeah, but do you know what? If you've read it and you kind of know what the meaning is surrounding it, don't you find that really bizarre? Don't you think that's just...
Well, actually, that was a question I want to ask you about. I told you I'd ask you one more, but I've got a second question, and that is, with respect to the title, it talks about sort of the mystical guides. The worms were mystical guides, and so, and when I read it, though, there was the moment where you were sort of hallucinating about the worms, but I didn't see another reference to mystical guides. So my question was, did you feel you had mystical support or guidance at any other point in your journey?
I think that they're kind of like your friends. I think that comes down to everybody around me that had treated me. I think that's what the mystical allies were about.
They weren't really mystical, they were real life guides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
They're kind of like guardian angels, aren't they? I mean, that's, in disguise. I think that just I don't know what.
So that would be something that you would like to draw out to readers, is that the mystical guides aspect isn't actually like you had mystical experiences as much as you had.
Oh God, no. It's just with regards to like the medical team and the professionals around you. That's what it is. It's there's that protective force around you. So it's kind of like a subtitle, Worms on Parachutes. What does that kind of tell you? And I think mystical allies in my cancer survival, it just kind of like summed it up a little bit more. So to make people understand more, really, as opposed to just having a title, it's kind of like a subtitle. So that's why I added it.
I like your reference to the force, and I think may the force be with all of us.
Oh. Oh yeah, well, your travel is amazing. What you're doing is incredible. So we've all got...
Thank you. Some would say I'm acting out a little bit.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do what you've got to do. So
well, we have some really cool things coming up, and I'm very, very grateful. And I have, I'm landed in Santa Fe for a little bit. I'm meeting the most amazing people. This is a story unto itself. And
you gotta write a book, Pat.
Pardon?
You gotta write a book.
I have a book. I just write it every week.
Wow.
There is a book. There is a book eventually in all this. But for the moment, I have some other things on my plate first. But I mean, I've met people from a meeting with a Native American shaman. I've met with a South American shaman. Just the environment here in Santa Fe in general is very eclectic, very oriented towards a lot of these complementary healing arts. It's a fascinating place. And I've been here before, but this time it's just really knocked my socks off. I'm going to
Wow.
continue to travel, but I think I'm going to base myself here in Santa Fe.
Oh, wow.
So when you come, you have to come visit.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Absolutely awesome. But when lots and lots of people, and I reach kind of like the audience that I want to reach with the book, and I'm sure, I mean, it's great. It's, you know, to achieve what we've achieved kind of already is absolutely fantastic. So you never know. You don't know what's going to happen, do you?
No, I think you have to work hard, you have to show up, and you have to be open.
Open and honest, absolutely.
And lucky does not hurt.
And persistent.
I like that.
Persistence as well. Never give up.
Yeah, that is so true. I cannot thank you enough. This has been such a nice conversation. Just really thank you. I know it's really late your time, and you've been so kind to hang around and
Oh, bless. Yeah, a few technical problems when I started, but yeah, I got there in the end.
Yeah, as you can see, it's straight. This Zoom technology, it's quite
Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing.
I should maybe close by just letting the audience know that next month we have Matthew Warriter, who's joining us. He's a cartoonist, and he does a cartoon called Cancer Owl, where cancer is portrayed as he portrays himself as an owl, and the other people interacting with different animals, and it's clever, it's insightful, it's pithy, and he has his own story, of course, stage 2 colorectal cancer, and so we'll look forward to meeting him. Cancer road trip will take, or sorry, not the road trip. The Cancer Book Club will take a break for July and August. We'll start again in September with Scott Baker's book about pediatric cancer and supporting his child through that process. So we invite anybody who's got a cancer-related book to submit it, and we read them and we work through them, and then we make sure that the authors get supported, get profiled, and we support them through Twitter and through our replay. So this conversation will be on our replay link, and anyone can access it. And again, authors are free to access it at any time too, as well, to sort of showcase their a conversation like this.
Everybody, Robin, as always, thank you so much. And just thank you. This has just been, I look forward to these. I love the conversations we have in Cancer Book Club. Thank you.